And at the same time, send out a notice that we are online. Okay, the notice went out, and then I'll check to see if we're online, and then we can start if it's working. All right, it is working. Glory Krishna. Okay, so first we'll chant. Let me get my guitar. Okay, tonight we are going to chant, what do we chant? Udilarana, how about that? Udilarana pura bhage, Dvidamani gora, Amani jage, Samuel, Lila Sate, Lila Nagara Raje, Tatai Tatai, Bajalako, Ganatana Tali, Janjero, Premi Talakala, Sanala Ganga, Sharanne Nuburu Rabaje, Mukunda Madhava, Yadava Hori, Mulena Polo Re, Vatana Pore, Vicheni Davashe, Keno Rate, Iva Shashari Razate, Emona Dulava, Anapateho, Ayaki, Guru Bhavana Keho, Bajale, Yashoda Sutta, Rame Bori Vela She, Udita Tavana Hoye Yasta, Dina Kela Mole, Hoye Vasta, Tavi Keno Ebe Alasahoe, Napajareda Yarashe, Ivana Nitya, Nasa, Nahana Navida, Nipada Prana, Namashaya, Kuri, Yaftana to me, Kaha Pana Kaje. Jivera Sadako, Jakateya se Madhurana, Avijati Mira, Anurupe, Vikagane Viraje, Krishna Namashuda, Kuriyapan, Jurayapa, no Brahman, Nakichu, Nakikuhara, Jonabuva Namaje, Udina Haroda, Kampapake, Twijamane, Amani Jage, Wakata Sawa, Lila Sate, Gaila Nagara Jay, Namaho Vishnu Paya, Krishna Krishnaya, Upanay, Shiva Te, Bhakti Vedanta, Samaniti Naminay, Namaste. That is what T-Devi Purvani Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidikacharya also Tara Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Navacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakna Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopinath Sai Mukunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Gaur. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurav Vani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatade Shatarni. So, let me read the Vaishnava poem we just sang by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which is called Arunodaya Kirtan Part 1. When the rising sun appeared in the east, the jewel of the twice-born Lord Gauranga awakened. Gathering his devotees around him, he set out to preach in the countryside, towns, and villages. Tatoi, tatoi, sounded the mridanga drums. and the cymbals chimed in time. Lord Gaurasundar's shimmering golden features danced and his ankles bells jingled. Mukunda Madhava Yadava Hori, chanted the devotees, their mouths filled with the vibrations. Calling out, they preached to those still sleeping. You spend your nights uselessly sleeping and your days decorating your bodies. Although you have achieved a rare human birth, you do not care for this precious gift. Instead, you refrain from serving the darling of Yashoda and slowly fall through your last moments of death. With every rising and setting of the sun, a day passes and is lost. Why then do you remain idle and not serve the Lord of the heart? This life is temporary and full of various miseries. Tell me all about it. Take shelter of the holy name as your only business. To penetrate the darkness of ignorance and bless everyone's heart, the sweet holy name has risen like the shining sun. Drink deeply the pure nectar of Krishna's holy name, which is the life and soul of Bhaktivinoda. The holy name's aside, there is nothing to be had in all the 14 worlds. Jai, Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. So, Om Ganat Timidandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmiditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we are continuing our study of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. We're on the 8th chapter, and we're reading about Ramchandra Puri, who is not the same as Ramchandra Kaviraj. That was a question raised last night. Ramchandra Puri is basically, who is he? He is a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. So he's the god brother of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master, Ishwara Puri. And being the god brother of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master, Ishwara Puri, the etiquette is that those like Lord Chaitanya should respect him like spiritual master, at least externally shall respect. However, Ramchandra Puri is basically a Mayavadi and an offender at the lotus feet of his guru, Madhavendra Puri. So even though Madhavendra Puri is such a great Vaishnava, still he had a disciple who was a complete rascal, and that was shown when Madhavendra Puri was leaving this world, and Madhavendra Puri was crying out for the Lord in the mood of ecstasy. Oh my Lord, I have not reached Mathura. And Ramchandra Puri, instead of helping his guru move into this particular mode of thought, he actually criticized his guru. He said, why are you lamenting? Brahma Bhutta Prasanatma, Shochati Nikangshati. You should be on the Brahman platform, Guru Maharaj, where you don't, and the Akangshati Nishoshati, where you don't lament for anything. Well, guess what? Yes, if one's an impersonalist, one doesn't lament, one doesn't have feelings, one doesn't, just negates one's personality, basically. But when one transcends this world and transcends even the impersonal understanding, one understands that the feelings of this world are originally there in the original pure pristine state in the spiritual realm. So just like in this world we may feel separation from our beloved, or some people feel separation from their pet cat or pet dog or pet alligator, whatever. And so that's a perverted reflection of the devotees who are feeling intense separation from Krishna, because they have this intimate relationship with Krishna. And that mood of separation is so intense it brings the devotees closer to Krishna. And when one is feeling separation from Krishna, one is actually connected with Krishna. And when one is feeling separation with something in this material world, one is disconnected. One is even disconnected when one is physically with one's beloved, if it's not spiritual. One is disconnected because there's not a meeting of minds. And thus you're related on the level of bodies. And the body, for those who haven't understood yet, the body is different than the soul. The body is different than the subtle body. And the soul is different than both the body and the subtle body. So got it? Get it. Okay, so therefore Ramchandra Puri became a offender at the lotus feet, not only of his guru, but all the devotees, and he actually lost his Krishna consciousness, whatever little Krishna consciousness he had. So he came to Jagannath Puri to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and when he came to Jagannath Puri to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one of the first things he did, or after greeting Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Lord Chaitanya offered obeisances to him, because he was the godbrother of his spiritual master. But anyway, after that, he took prasadam at the house of Jagadananda Pandit, and he ate like I don't want to say pig, I don't want to criticize him, but he ate a lot. And then he sat Jagadananda Pandit down, and he kept feeding him until Jagadananda Pandit ate too much, and then he criticized Jagadananda Pandit for eating too much. And this was his mood, to really set up the devotees to do something that externally could be criticizable, so he could criticize them because he enjoyed finding fault. And Prabhupada said, that's like a fly. The fly lands on what? Stool. Like you've ever seen like mounds of stool. The flies land on the stool. And the opposite of that is like a honeybee or bumblebee. It goes for the nectar in the flower. So we should be like bumblebees, honeybees. We go for the nectar, not that we land on stool, this find fault with people. Anyway, finding fault is greatly offensive, especially when we're doing it with Vaishnavas. And then what happens then? We lose a taste for hearing and chanting, we lose a taste for our devotional service, and we become covered up. So Krishna disappears from our hearts. Krishna's always there in our hearts, but we cannot perceive his presence anymore. So one has to be extremely careful when dealing with Vaishnavas. Okay, on that happy note, Om Gana Timirandasha Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshud Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my humble obeisances at the lotus feet of my spiritual master's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Okay, so Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, I brought you up to date on this chapter. Let's continue. Jagat Guru Madhavendra Kari Premadana Eshloka Paditeno Kaila Antardana. His Divine Grace Madhavendra Puri, the spiritual master of the entire world, thus distributed ecstatic love for Krishna while passing away from the material world. He chanted the following verse. Aidina dayadara nata he mathura nata kadavalo jase Hridayam tva daloka kataram dayata ramyati kim karomyaham. O my Lord, O most merciful Master, O Master of Mathura, when shall I see you again? Because of my not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. O most beloved, what shall I do now? So these were his final words. And of course this is an indication of what Rupa Goswami calls as loyam, which means intense hankering. That's the price of pure devotional service. Also, intense hankering for material things is a deviation from devotional service according to the nectar of instruction. Jahara priyasa japanimagraha janasanga shaloyam cha sabirvakti vinashyati. What does that say? That you will deviate if you collect too much, you eat too much, you over-endeavor for your false ego things, talk too much prajalpa, You don't follow the rules and regulations, or you follow the rules and regulations ritualistically. That's called nimagraha. You take bad association, or you hanker for material things. I must have this. I must have this. Of course, Krishna will only give you what you need, what's good for you. So for an explanation, see Madhya Lila 4:197. Shloke Krishna Prema Kare Upadesha Krishna Raviyaha Virahe Bhaktera Bhava Vishesha. In this verse, Madhavendra Puri teaches how to achieve ecstatic love for Krishna. By feeling separation from Krishna, one becomes spiritually situated. Krishna, one has Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram. Oh my Lord, I am your servant, but somehow or other I've fallen down to this horrible material world. Apatitam mam vishame bhavambudo. Give me your mercy, kripaya tava, pankaja, your lotus feet. Stita duli sadrasambhachintaya. Fix me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. So, anyway, this is a devotee's mood. That's why generally when I'm giving an initiation, I recite that particular verse, because that's the mood in which we have to be chanting our japa. Hare Krishna, 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 I am suffering. Of course, if you don't think you're suffering, you're in trouble. Pritipati Ropanakari Gela Premankura Se Premankura Vriksha Caitanya Thakura. Madhavendra Puri sowed the seed of ecstatic love for Krishna within this material world and then departed. That seed later became a great tree in the form of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So Lord Chaitanya would always say that when he found someone exhibiting ecstatic love, that person must have had a connection with Madhavendra Puri. Prashtave kahilun puri goshanira niryana yehashune sebada bhagyavan. I have incidentally described the passing away of Madhavendra Puri. Anyone who hears this must be considered very fortunate. Ramachandra Puriyache Rahila Nila Chile Virakta Swabhava Kabu Rahe Konas Dale. Thus Ramchandra Puri stayed at Jagannath Puri. As is customary for those in the renounced order, he would sometimes stay someplace and then go away. He kept wandering. Animanthrana Bhikshakare Nahika Nirnaya Anyara Bhikshara Stitira Layena Nischaya. There was no certainty of where Ramchandra Puri would take his meal, for he would do so even uninvited. Nevertheless, he was very particular about keeping account of how others were taking their meals. In other words, he would just notice how many puris he is eating, how much quinoa the person is taking. Because I don't know if they had quinoa then. Probably not. Quinoa had just recently been brought into India, and they're starting to grow it. Prabhu nimantrane lage kodig chari pana kabu kashishvara govinda kana tina jana. To invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would cost 320 kautis, that's small conch shells. This would provide lunch for 3 people, including Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and sometimes Kashishvara and Govinda. Pratyaha prabhura viksha iti uti hoya kehayari mulyane charipana nirnaya. Every day, the Lord would take his meal at a different place, and if someone was prepared to pay for a meal, the price was fixed at only 4 panas. Prabhura stiti riti viksha shayana prayana Ramachandra Puri kare sarvanusandhana. So the reason is the price quoted, I should actually tell you this, is because they were serving Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Mahaprasadam from Lord Jagannath. And they would purchase the Mahaprasadam, and then they would cook something at the same time. But that's why usually a fixed price was there. Not simply the price of the vegetables, but the price of buying the Mahaprasadam from the storekeepers. Ramachandra Puri concerned himself with gathering all sorts of information about how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was situated, including his regulative principles, his lunch, his sleep, and his movements. Let me find fault in him. Prabodayate ka guna sparshite narila chidra chahi bure kanha chidra na poila. Because Ramchandra Puri was interested only in finding faults, he could not understand the transcendental qualities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His only concern was finding faults, but still he couldn't find any. Poor guy. Sannyasi hanakare mishtana vakshana e bogehaya kaiche indriya varana. At last he found a fault. How can a person in the renounced order eat so many sweetmeats, he said. If one eats sweets, controlling the senses is very difficult. Which is true. Well, it's not true that Lord Chaitanya was eating too many sweets. Yeah, but it is true that if one eats too many sweets, controlling the senses is very difficult. Einindakari kahe saraloka stane prabore dekiteha avashaise pratitane. In this way, Ramchandra Puri blasphemed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before everyone, but nevertheless, he would regularly come to see the Lord every day. What a hypocrite. Prabhu Guru Budye Karena Sambrama Samana Tenho Chidrachahi Bule Etara Kama. When they met, the Lord would offer him respectful obeisances, considering him a godbrother of his spiritual master. Ramchandra Puri's business, however, was to search for faults in the Lord. Yatha nindakari yatha Prabhu Saba Jane Tatapi Adarakari Bhata I Sambrame. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew that Ramchandra Puri was criticizing him before everyone, but whenever Ramchandra Puri came to see him, the Lord offered him respects with great attention. Ekadina pratakale Aila Prabhura Gara Pipilika Deki Kichu Kahena Uttara. One day, Ramchandra Puri came in the morning to the abode of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, seeing many ants. He said something to criticize the Lord. Ooh. Retravatra akshava masitena pipilika sancharanti aho viraktanam sanyasinam yam indriyala sati bruvanutaya gataha. Last night there was sugar candy here, he said. Therefore, ants are wandering about. Alas, this renounced sannyasi is attached to such sense gratification. After speaking in this way, he got up and left. Prabhu Paramparaya Ninda Kairachena Shavana Eve Sakshat Shunilena Kapita Nindana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had heard rumors about Ramchandra Puri's blasphemy. Now he directly heard his fanciful accusations. Ramchandra Puri could find no faults in the character of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for he is situated in a transcendental position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ants are generally found everywhere, but when Ramchandra Puri saw ants crawling in the abode of the Lord, he took it for granted they must have been there because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had been eating sweetmeats. He thus discovered imaginary faults in the Lord. What was the last word? And then left. Sahajye pipilika sarvatra vedaya tahate tarkutana dosha lagaya. Ants generally crawl about here, there, and everywhere, but Ramchandra Puri, imagining faults, criticized Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by alleging that there had been sweetmeats in his room. Shunitaha prabhura sankochabaya mane govinde bolana kitchu kahena vachane. After hearing this criticism, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was doubtful and apprehensive. Therefore he called Govinda and instructed him as follows. Aji haite viksha amara eta niryama pinda bhavera eka chauti pancha gandhara vyanjana. From today on, It will be a rule that I shall accept only 1/4 of a pot of Lord Jagannath's prasadam and 5 gandas worth of vegetables. In other words, he decided to reduce his eating. Why? Because of the criticism of Ramchandra Puri. Now, he was showing etiquette towards Ramchandra Puri, and also he didn't want to further agitate the scene. Iha bai arika arakichu na aniva arika nile ama eta na dekiva. If you bring any more than this, you will not see me here anymore. Shoo! That was like a lightning bolt that struck the hearts of the devotees. They couldn't feed Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu properly. Sakala Vaishnave Govinda Kahi Ebat Shuni Saparamate Aiche Haila Vajragata. Govinda relayed this message to all the devotees. When they heard it, they felt as if their heads had been struck by thunderbolts because they had so much love for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ramachandra Purike Sabaya Deha Tiraskara Epa Pishta Asiprana Lila Sabara. All the devotees condemned Ramchandra Puri, saying, the sinful man has come here and taken our lives. Saidina eka viprakaila nimantrana eka choti vata pancha kandhara vyanjana ematra govinda kaila angikara mathaya mare viprakari haha kara. That day a Brahmin extended an invitation to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when Govinda accepted only 5 gandas worth of vegetables and 1/4 of a pot of rice. The Brahmin, in great despair, struck his head with his hand and cried, alas, alas. Because part of the culture in India is that you really need to eat a lot when you go to someone's house, or else they may feel that they made a mistake or feel offended or something like that. Usually you have to eat enough until you belch. In the Western world, belching is not considered so nice. But in India, at least in some parts of India, it's required. Prabhupada said, you know you've eaten enough if you belch twice. So I know some devotees, even though they were ready to belch twice, they just held it back so they can eat more. Say Bhata Vyanjana Prabhu Ardeka Kaila Ye Kichura Ta Govinda Paila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ate only half of the rice and vegetables, and whatever remained was taken by Govinda. Ardashana Karena Prabhu Govinda Ardhashana Sabhavakta Tavik Shadila Vojana. Thus both Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Govinda only ate half the food they needed. Because of this, all the other devotees gave up eating. Govinda Kashishvare Prabhu Kaila Adapana Dunhayan Yatramagi Kara Udara Banana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Govinda and Kashishvara, you may both take alms elsewhere to fill your bellies. As of course, Govinda and Kashishvara were his 2 personal assistants, and interestingly enough, they were his godbrothers, and they had been ordered by Ishwara Puri to serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when Ishwara Puri was getting ready to leave this world. So, even though one's not supposed to take service from one's godbrothers, because the order of Ishwara Puri was more important than that particular item of etiquette, it overrid the ordinary etiquette, because the order of the spiritual master overrides ordinary etiquette. Therefore, they both joined Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agreed to accept their service. E Rupa Mahaduke Dinakata Kela Shuni Ramachandra Puri Prabhu Pasha Aila. In this way, some days passed in great unhappiness. Hearing of all this, Ramchandra Puri went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Pranama Kadi Prabhu Kaila Charana Vandana Prabhuri Kahaya Kichu Hasya Vachana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered his obeisances to Ramchandra Puri, worshipping his feet. Then Ramchandra Puri smiled and spoke to the Lord. Sanyasira Dharma Nahi Indriya Tarpana Yache Tache Kare Matra Udara Bharana. Ramchandra Puri advised, "It is not the business of a sannyasi to gratify his senses. He should fill his belly some way or other." Tomare kshina deki shuni kara ardashana e shushka vairagya nahi sannyasira dharma. I have heard that you have cut your eating in half. Indeed, I see that you were skinny. Such dry renunciation is also not the religion of a sannyasi. In other words, he is criticizing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for eating too little. So previously he was criticizing him for eating too much or having ants in his room. And now he's saying, you're engaged in dry renunciation. And he's going to go on. Yata yogyo tare bare nakari vishaya bhoga sannyasira tabe sera hayagyana yoga. A sannyasi eats as much as necessary to maintain his body, but he does not enjoy satisfying his senses materially. Thus the sannyasi becomes perfect in his spiritual advancement and knowledge. Okay. This is Bhagavad Gita. Natyashnatopi yogosti Caitanya anashnataha achati swapna shilasya jagato naivacharjuna yukta hara viharasya yukta chetasya karmasu yukta swapna vabodasya yogo bhavati dukkha. From the Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna said, "My dear Arjuna, one cannot perform mystic yoga if he eats more than necessary or needlessly fasts, sleeps and dreams too much, or does not sleep enough. One should eat and enjoy his senses as much as necessary. One should properly endeavor to execute his duties, and one should regulate his sleep and wakefulness. Thus one can become freed from material pains by executing mystic yoga." This is a quotation from Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, 16 to 17. Famous. Yuktahara viharasya. One has to be moderate in his eating and sleeping and everything like that. Not too much, not too little. Prabhukahi agyabhalaga mui shishya tamara more shiksha deha e bhagya amara. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then humbly submitted, "I am just like an ignorant boy and I am like your disciple. It is my great fortune that you are instructing me." Such a humble position. He's showing us the proper etiquette. Not to argue. Eta Shuni Ramachandra Puri Uti Gela Bhaktagana Ardashana Kare Puri Goshanir Shunila. Hearing this, Ramchandra Puri got up and left. He also heard from various sources that all the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were eating half as much as usual. Adadina Bhaktagana Saha Paramananda Puri Prabhu Pashe Nivedila Dainya Vinayaya Kari. The next day, Paramananda Puri and other devotees approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with great humility and submission. Ramachandra Puri Haya Nirindulka Swabhava Tarabole Anachari Kiba Habe Lava. Paramananda Puri, because Paramananda Puri was also a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, Paramananda Puri said, "My god brother Ramachandra Puri is by nature a bad critic. If you give up eating because of his words, what will be the profit? Purira swabhava ya teshta ahara karana yena kaya tare kao yaya yatana kariya." It is the nature of Ramchandra Puri that he first lets one eat as much as desired, and if one does not eat more than necessary with great attention, he makes him eat more. Phew. Kalyana punatare kariye nindana eta anakal tumarakata achedana. In this way, he induces a person to eat more than necessary, and then Ramchandra Puri directly criticizes him, saying, "You eat so much. How much money do you have in your treasury?" Sannyasike eta kalyana kara dharma nasha adaiva janino tamara kichu nahi vasha. Also, by inducing sannyasis to eat so much, you spoil their religious principles. Therefore, I can understand that you have no advancement. Phew. Ke kaiche vyavahare keva kaiche kaya e anusandhana teno karaya sadaya. It is Ramchandra Puri's business to inquire always about how others are eating and conducting their daily affairs. Shastraye dvi dharma kairache varjana se karma nirantara inhara karana. The two kinds of activities rejected in the revealed scriptures constitute his daily affairs. Parasvabhava karmani na prasham sena karhayat vishvam ekatmakam pashan prakritya purushena cha. This is the injunction of the Shastras. One should see that because of the meeting of material nature and the living entity, the universe is acting uniformly. Therefore, thus, one should neither praise nor criticize the characteristics or activities of others. This verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 11.28.1 was spoken by Lord Krishna to Uddhava. Taramaje purvavidi prashamsa chariya paravidi nindakare balishta janiya. Of the two rules, Ramachandra Puri obeys the first by abandoning praise, but although he knows that the second is more prominent, he neglects it by criticizing others. The above-mentioned verse from Srimad Bhagavatam gives two injunctions. The first, called Purvavidi, is that one should not praise, and the second, Paravidi, is that one should not criticize. As will be apparent from the following verse, the injunction against praise is less important than the injunction against blasphemy. One should carefully preserve the Paravidi, although one may neglect the Purvavidi. In other words, you can praise. Thus, the actual injunction is that one may praise, but one should not criticize. This is called Sheshokti, or a statement having two meanings. Ramchandra Puri, however, acted in just the opposite way, for he neglected the Paravidi, but strictly observed the Purvavidi. In other words, he never praised anyone. Since he avoided following the principle of not criticizing, Ramchandra Puri broke both the rules. Purva pariyar majje para vidir balavan. Between the former rule and the later rule, the latter is more important. This is a verse from the Nyaya literatures. Yahan guna shatahache taha nakare grahana guna majje chale kare dosha aropada. Even where there are hundreds of good qualities, a critic does not consider them. Rather, he attempts by some trick to point out a fault in those attributes. In Haras Vavava Yihan Karite na yu yaya Tapi Kariye Kichu Marma Duka Paya. One should not therefore follow the principles of Ramchandra Puri. Nevertheless, I have to say something against him because he is making our hearts unhappy. In Haravachane Kene Anatyaga Kara Purvavat Nirmantranamana Sabara Bola Dara. Why have you given up proper eating due to the criticism of Ramchandra Puri? Please accept invitations as before. This is the request of us all. Prabhu Kahe Sabe Kene Purire Kararosha Sahaja Dharma Kahi Teno Kanra Kiba Dosha. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Why are all of you angry at Ramchandra Puri? He is expounding the natural principles of sannyas life. Why are you accusing him?" In other words, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to keep following this etiquette. It was really interesting. He didn't want to violate the etiquette insofar as dealing with his guru's godbrothers. Yati hana jiva lampatya atyanta anyaya yatira dharma prana rakite aharamatra kaya. For a sannyasi to indulge in satisfying the tongue is a great offense. The duty of a sannyasi is to eat only as much as needed to keep the body and soul together. Very, very important instruction. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was showing us that sometimes, even if someone's envious, we have to take their words into consideration. Maybe Krishna is speaking through someone who you would never expect him to speak through. Just like Bilvamangal Thakur, he saw that Krishna was speaking through the mouth of Chintamani, a prostitute. Whew. Wow. So we should take things into consideration. Maybe there's a message. Tabe sabe mele parbore Bahuyatna Kaila, Sabara Agrahe Prabhu, Ardeka Rakila. When they requested very fervently that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu take a full meal, he still would not do so. Instead, he responded to their request by accepting half as much as usual. Oh my God. Dvipana Kodi Lage, Prabhura Nimantrane, Kabu Dvi Janavokta Kabu, Tina Jane. The cost for the food needed to invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was fixed at 2 panas, kodis, 160 conch shells, and that food would be taken by 2 men and sometimes 3. Shoo. Abhojana viparyari karena nimantrana prasada mulya lahite lage kodi dvi pana. When a Brahmin at whose home an invitation could not be accepted by the Lord, he would pay 2 panas of conch shells to purchase the prasadam. In other words, the prasadam was purchased from the stalls where they sold Mahaprasadam of Lord Jagannath. Ojana vipra yarini mantrana kare kichu prasadane kichu paka kare kare. When a Brahmana at whose home an invitation could be accepted invited him, the Brahmana would purchase part of the prasadam and cook the rest at home. Pandita, that's what I'd said before. Pandita Goshani Bhagavanacharya Sarvabhoma Nimantrana Neradine Yare Kari Nimantrana Tansavara Ichaya Prabhu Karena Bhojana Tahan Prabhura Swatantra Nai Yachi Tanramana. Even on a day when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was invited to dine by others, if Gadadhar Pandit Bhagavanacharya Sarvabhoma Bhattacharya invited him, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had no independence. He would accept their invitations as they desired. Bhaktagane Sukadite Prabhura Avatara Yahan Yache Yogyatahan Karena Vyavahara. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually descended to give happiness to the devotees. Thus he behaved in whatever way fit the time and circumstance. Kabulo Kikariti Yena Itara Jana Kabu Swatantra Karena Ishvarya Prakatana. Because of his full independence, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sometimes behaved like a common man and sometimes manifested his godly opulence. Kabu Ramachandra Puri Rahaya Brija Praya Kabu Tari Nahimane Deke Trina Praya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sometimes accepted Ramchandra Puri as his master and considered himself a servant, and sometimes the Lord, not caring for him, would see him as being just like a straw. Ishwara Charitra Prabhura Udira Gochara Yaviye Karena Se Saba Manohara. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu behaved exactly like the Supreme Personality Godhead, beyond the restriction of anyone's intelligence. He did whatever he liked, but all his activities were very beautiful. E Mata Ramachandra Puri Nilachile Dina Katta Rahigela Tirtha Karivare. Thus Ramchandra Puri stayed for some days at Nilachala Jagannath Puri. Then he left to visit various holy places of pilgrimage. Teno Gele Prabhura Gana Haila Harashita Shirera Patarayena Padila Achambita. The devotees considered Ramchandra Puri to be like a great burden on their heads. When he left Jagannath Puri, everyone felt extremely happy, Hunibo, as if a great stone had suddenly fallen from their heads to the ground. Swachandi Nimantrana Prabhura Kirtana Nartana Swachandi Karena Sabe Prasada Bhojana. After his departure, everything was happy once again. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted invitations as usual and led congregational chanting and dancing. Everyone else also accepted prasadam. So there's one or two more verses. Guru Peksha Kaila Iche Palahaya Krameshwara Pararyanta Aparade Te Kaya. If one spiritual master rejects him, one becomes so fallen that he, like Ramchandra Puri, commits offenses even to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yadyapi Guru Budye Prabhu Taradosha Na Laila Tarapala Dwara Loke Shiksha Karaila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not consider the offenses of Ramchandra Puri, for the Lord considered him his spiritual master. However, his character instructed everyone about the result of offending the spiritual master. Caitanya Charitrayena Amritera Pura Shunite Shavanemane Lagaya Madhura. The character of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is full of nectar. Hearing about it is pleasing to the mind and ear. Caitanya Charitaliki Shuna Ekamane Anyasi Pabha Prema Shri Krishna Charane. I write about the character of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. O readers, please hear with attention, for thus you will easily receive the ecstatic love for the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, Lord Sri Krishna. And now we'll end the chapter. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Yara Shah Caitanya Charitamrta Kahi Krishna Das. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta, following their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta, Antya Lila, 8th chapter, describing how the Lord reduced his eating in fear of the criticism of Ramchandra Puri. So today we finish the chapter. So let us take some questions. I'll unmute you or allow you to unmute yourselves. Does anyone have any questions? You can raise your hand. Everyone's feeling really...
Please accept my humble obeisances.
Yes, Rakesh, what's the question?
Yesterday you talked about Pusti Marga, and you said they are from a Rudra Sampradaya. My understanding, Rudra Sampradaya worship Lord Shiva.
No, that's not true. The Rudra Sampradaya has Lord Shiva as the first member of the Sampradaya Acharya, and he teaches about the worship of Vishnu. As Lord Shiva says, Radhanam Sarvesham Vishnu Radhanam Param Tasmat Padatharam Devi Tvariyanam Samarchanam. So the members of the Rudra Sampradaya do not, they worship Lord Shiva as a devotee, but not as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So
is it true with all others? Sorry.
There's 4 Sampradayas: Rudra Sampradaya, Lakshmi Sampradaya, Kumara Sampradaya, and Brahma Sampradaya. And all 4 Sampradayas, like Lakshmi Sampradaya doesn't teach worship of Lakshmi, it teaches worship of Lord Narayan, because Ramanujacharya is a member of the Lakshmi Sampradaya. So, all right?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. We worship Lord Shiva actually as a devotee. He's the Sampradaya Acharya for the Rudra Sampradaya. Okay. And there's a question here in the chat window. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Ramchandra Puri's past has always scared me in terms of offenses. How much one should be careful? The way Ramchandra Puri forced devotees to eat more than criticize. Same way some devotees contaminate others' minds against innocent devotees. Do innocent devotees feel the wrath from others feeling bad about you due to contaminated hearts, considering Krishna resides in devotees' heart? So we should run away whenever we hear criticism of devotees. It actually poisons other people's hearts, especially you see on the internet. That's why I do not read comments on my Facebook page, because sometimes you get these really nasty comments, but I have someone else who reads them and can erase them. So the nature of this world is that people take joy in criticizing others and putting other people down. Not everybody does, but there is a certain class of people, the mode of ignorance, where they actually, it gives them happiness because they feel that they have actually asserted themselves. I was just, last night someone sent me some Ritvik thing, just criticizing the gurus in ISKCON. And, I'm thinking, there may have been some people gurus in the past who didn't come up to snuff, so to speak. But knowing my godbrothers who were serving Krishna, they're completely dedicated to the mission of Srila Prabhupada, sacrificing their life. What do they get from it? I look at great devotees like Gopal Krishna Maharaj, for example, or Bhakti True Maharaj, and or Jayapataka Maharaj, and all my exalted God brothers, and also God nephews too. How they just like gave their lives, their youth, and everything to serve Prabhupada's mission. And now they're getting old, and what do they gain from it? But still people criticize, oh, the gurus, they have so much opulence and things like that. Phew. I mean, it's just sacrifice for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These devotees sacrifice it. Anyway, okay, so who else has a question? Does anybody else have a...
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Oh, Gopisha, good to hear from you.
I was wondering, what measures can we take to make sure we don't accidentally criticize anybody?
Maybe we can just see the good qualities. Instead of actually thinking about automatically what are the bad qualities, just praise someone. Even if you have to correct someone, it's good to praise them first before you correct them. So that's the measure. That you look at someone's good quality, even go to Ravan, he had some good qualities. And what were the good qualities? He was very Brahminical. He knew the Vedic literatures very well. And just had a little lust there. So anyway, so we should try to see someone's good qualities and praise, especially devotees. But anyway, what's the benefit of criticizing people? What do we get from it? Prabhupada would see our good qualities and he would fan them. In the early days, I remember Prabhupada in 26 Second Avenue had to deal with people who were really wild. And that's not a criticism, that is an objective fact. And Prabhupada just saw the good qualities and he fanned it, whatever good qualities they had. So we should do the same thing. And ignore and not take any offenses ourselves, but be upset if someone else is offended. That's a very good question. Okay, here's another.
Thank you much.
Thank you for asking a question. So here's another question from in the chat window. Second question from Jai Radhika. One should not praise others too. Although a certain level of praising others get us to the 6 of the good qualities. Different levels of praise are not just limited to channel. The idea of not praising others is that generally we praise others because we want to get something from them. But if we feel genuine appreciation rather than praise, and I deal with this in my empathic communication course, that we appreciate people, like what they did, how you feel about it, what they did to contribute to your needs, and thank you very much. So it's specific. It's not praise. It's actually appreciation. I think that's one way I can put it. And that way it's not shallow. Okay, good question. What's the harm in appreciating, even if it's more than realistic? There's no harm in appreciating. But praising, general praise, it tends to be rather manipulative. Oh, you're so wonderful. Your lotus feet, they can't be beat. Lotus eyes, lotus feet, whatever. Your class was wonderful. Well, what did I say? Well, if you appreciated what I say I appreciate it because it helped inspire me not to criticize Vaishnava, because that's actually very good. That's sort of appreciation. But if someone just says, you're ecstatic, then I may believe it. Okay, that is a very good question. Why do devotees criticize devotees? Is it that they can't see someone better? Because they feel, it may be a variety of reasons. They may feel insecure themselves, and I hate to use the word envy, because envy comes from some deep unmet need. You know, maybe they have a need for appreciation themselves, and then they can appreciate others. I mean, I love to appreciate different devotees. It's really ecstatic. It makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Okay, so I guess it's time to end right now. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you all tomorrow. Same time, same station. All glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti.